The woman standing before Judge was trembling so violently that the bailiff instinctively took a step closer, concerned she might collapse. Her hands clutched a crumpled tissue, her eyes red and swollen from what appeared to be hours of crying. As I watched from the press gallery, pen poised over my notepad, I had no idea I was about to witness something that would haunt me, in the most beautiful way possible, for the rest of my life. "Your Honor," she began, her voice barely above a whisper, "please, I'm begging you." And then she broke down completely. Judge, a man I'd seen handle thousands of cases with a perfect blend of authority and warmth, froze. His hand, which had been reaching for his gavel, slowly lowered. The entire courtroom seemed to hold its breath. Even the court stenographer stopped typing, her fingers suspended over the keys as if time itself had paused. What happened next would be replayed on news stations across the country, shared millions of times on social media, and remind an entire nation that sometimes, just sometimes, our justice system gets it exactly right. But let me back up and tell you how we got here. The case on Judge's docket that morning seemed routine, at least on paper. Maria Rodriguez, a 34-year-old single mother of 3, was facing 5 parking violations totaling $475. In the grand scheme of criminal justice, it was nothing. A drop in the ocean. Just another case in Providence Municipal Court that would typically be resolved in 5 minutes or less. But as I'd learned covering Judge's courtroom, nothing was ever quite as simple as it appeared on paper. Maria had been called to the stand at 10:23 a.m. I remember checking my watch because I had another hearing to cover at 11, and I was already thinking about how to slip out quietly. She walked to the defendant's table with her head down, wearing a coat that had clearly seen better days. The kind with patches on the elbows and a missing button that had been replaced with one that didn't quite match. Her 3 children sat in the gallery behind her. The oldest, a girl who couldn't have been more than 12, held a baby in her lap while a boy of about 7 or 8 sat between them, swinging his legs because they didn't quite reach the floor. All 3 were impeccably dressed. Their clothes might have been second-hand, but they were clean, pressed, and carefully coordinated. It was clear that whatever resources this woman had, her children came first. "Ms. Rodriguez," Judge began, looking over his reading glasses at the file before him, "you're here today regarding 5 parking violations spanning the past 8 months. That's quite a few tickets." "Yes, Your Honor," Maria replied, her voice steady but strained. "I know, and Before you explain," the judge interrupted gently, "I want to understand the circumstances. These violations, let me see here. They're all in the same location, outside Rhode Island Hospital. Were you working there?" That's when I saw it, the moment her composure began to crack. Her shoulders tensed, and she blinked rapidly, fighting back tears. "No, Your Honor. My middle son, Carlos." She turned to gesture toward the boy in the gallery who had stopped swinging his legs and was now watching his mother with worried eyes. "He was being treated there for leukemia." The courtroom went silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Judge removed his glasses slowly, his expression transforming from judicial neutrality to something else, something deeply human. "I see," he said quietly. "Go on." And that's when Maria Rodriguez began to tell a story that would leave not a single dry eye in that courtroom. "Carlos was diagnosed 18 months ago," she continued, her voice growing shakier with each word. "Acute lymphoblastic leukemia. He was 6 years old. 6 years old, Your Honor, and they told me he needed treatment immediately, or he might not make it to his 7th birthday." I found myself leaning forward, my professional detachment crumbling. Around me, other reporters were doing the same. The sketch artist in the corner had stopped drawing. Even the prosecutor, a usually stern woman named Catherine Walsh, was blinking rapidly. "I work 2 jobs, Your Honor. I clean offices at night, 6 p.m. to midnight. and I work at a laundromat during the day. But neither job offers health insurance for part-time workers, and I'm part-time at both because I need the flexibility to take care of my children." Judge nodded, his eyes never leaving her face. "What about the children's father?" "He left when Carlos got sick," Maria said, and for the first time, I heard anger creep into her voice. Not loud or aggressive, just a quiet fury at the injustice of it all. "He said he couldn't handle it. Couldn't handle watching his son die. So he left, and I haven't seen him since. No child support. No phone calls. Nothing." "I'm sorry," the judge said, and the genuine compassion in those two words seemed to steady Maria somewhat. "Thank you, Your Honor. So it was just me. Me and 3 children, and Carlos needing chemotherapy 3 times a week. The hospital is 40 minutes from our apartment by bus, but the buses don't run frequently enough for me to get him there and back to work on time. I'd already lost 1 job because I missed too many shifts. I couldn't afford to lose another. So I bought a car," she continued, and now the tears were flowing freely. She didn't bother to wipe them away. "It cost $800. I saved for 3 months. It was a 1997 Honda Civic with 180,000 miles on it, and it burned oil, and the passenger door didn't open from the inside, but it ran. It got me and Carlos to the hospital." Judge was leaning forward now, completely absorbed in her story. "And the parking tickets? The hospital parking garage costs $15 a day. Your Honor, I know that doesn't sound like much, but when you're going 3 times a week, that's $45 a week, $180 a month. I had to choose between parking fees and food for my children. Between parking fees and keeping the electricity on. Between parking fees and Carlos's medication co-pays." She paused, wiping her eyes with the crumpled tissue. "So I started parking on the street. There were meters, but they were always full during the day. I'd park in spots that said no parking because I told myself it would just be for an hour, just while Carlos got his treatment. But chemotherapy doesn't run on a schedule. Sometimes we'd be there for 3 hours, sometimes 5. And each time I came out, there was another ticket on my windshield. I kept them all," Maria said, reaching into her purse with shaking hands. She pulled out a worn envelope and held it up. "Every single one. I told myself I'd pay them when things got better. When Carlos finished treatment. When I could get ahead." "Did Carlos finish his treatment?" Judge asked gently. And here, finally, Maria Rodriguez smiled. It was a small, fragile thing, but it was genuine. "Yes, Your Honor. 3 weeks ago, the doctors told us he's in remission. He's been cancer-free for 3 months. A spontaneous burst of applause erupted in the courtroom. Even the bailiff was clapping. The young boy, Carlos, looked around, confused but pleased by the attention, and waved shyly at the crowd. Judge was smiling too, nodding his approval, but he raised his hand for silence. "That's wonderful news, Ms. Rodriguez. Truly wonderful. So now we come to the matter of these fines." And that's when Maria Rodriguez's smile disappeared, and the desperation returned to her face with crushing force. "Your Honor, I want to pay them. I swear I want to pay every cent, but I can't. The medical bills, even with the assistance programs, even with everything, I owe $14,000 to the hospital. They've been patient, but they're starting to threaten collections. My car died last month. The transmission finally gave out. I'm back to taking the bus, which means I had to quit my day job because I couldn't get there on time anymore." She was speaking faster now, the words tumbling out in a rush, as if she was afraid she'd lose the courage to continue. "I'm surviving on 1 income now, and it's not enough. We got an eviction notice last week, not because I haven't been paying rent, but because the landlord is selling the building. I have 30 days to find a new place, but I need first month, last month, and a security deposit, and I have $200 in my bank account. $200, Your Honor." Her voice rose, breaking with emotion. "If you impose these fines, if you make me pay this money, I can't find a new apartment. My children and I will be homeless. We'll be on the street. I'm not asking you to excuse what I did. I know I broke the law. I know parking illegally is wrong, but Your Honor, I'm begging you. I'm begging you to please have mercy. My children need a home. They've been through so much already. Please don't take that away from them." And then Maria Rodriguez, this woman who had held herself together through her son's cancer diagnosis, through abandonment by her husband, through working 2 jobs and navigating an impossible maze of medical bills and bureaucracy, finally fell apart completely. She sobbed. Great, heaving sobs that shook her entire body. She covered her face with her hands, her shoulders shaking, and through her fingers came the kind of crying that comes from the very depths of the soul. The crying of someone who has been strong for so long that they've forgotten what it feels like to break. Her daughter in the gallery started crying too, still holding the baby, who began to fuss. The 7-year-old boy, Carlos, the survivor, climbed down from his seat and ran to the barrier, reaching his small arms toward his mother. "Mommy," he called out, his voice high and frightened. "Mommy, don't cry." I'm not ashamed to tell you that I was crying too. Looking around the courtroom, I saw I wasn't alone. The prosecutor was wiping her eyes. The bailiff had turned away, his jaw clenched. Even the court stenographer had tears streaming down her face as her fingers continued their mechanical dance across the keys. But all eyes were on Judge. The judge stood up slowly from his bench. In all my years covering his courtroom, I had never seen him do this during a case. He stepped down from the elevated platform, his black robes flowing around him, and walked toward Maria Rodriguez. The bailiff moved forward instinctively. Judges don't typically approach defendants directly, but waved him off with a gentle gesture. He stopped about 3 feet from Maria, respecting her space, and when he spoke, his voice was thick with emotion. "Ms. Rodriguez, look at me, please." She lowered her hands slowly, her face wet with tears, her eyes red and swollen. She looked up at the judge with an expression of pure terror, clearly expecting the worst. "I have been a judge for 42 years, began, and I noticed his own eyes were glistening. "In that time, I've seen thousands of cases. I've heard every excuse, every story, every plea. And I've learned to distinguish between those who are trying to manipulate the system and those who are simply trying to survive." He paused, and in that moment, you could feel the entire courtroom holding its breath. "What you did for your son, parking illegally so you could get him to treatment, working 2 jobs to keep food on the table, holding your family together when you had every reason to fall apart. Ms. Rodriguez, that's not criminal behavior. That's heroism." Maria's hand went to her mouth, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. "The law says you owe $475 in parking fines," the judge continued. "But I look at you, and I look at your children, and I think about what you've been through, and I think about what you're still facing, and I have to ask myself, what serves justice here? What serves the community? Is justice served by adding to the burdens of a mother who has already carried more than anyone should have to bear?" He turned to address the entire courtroom. "This woman broke the law, yes, but she broke it in the service of saving her child's life. She broke it not out of disrespect for the rules, but out of desperate love for her son. If we cannot find compassion for that, if we cannot find mercy in those circumstances, then what kind of justice system are we running?" Turning back to Maria, Judge said the words that would be repeated on news stations and social media for weeks to come. "Ms. Rodriguez, I am dismissing all 5 parking violations. You owe nothing, not 1 cent." The courtroom erupted. People were on their feet, applauding, crying, cheering. Maria Rodriguez collapsed into the chair behind her, her hands pressed to her chest, unable to speak. Her daughter had passed the baby to someone else and was crying openly. Carlos had somehow gotten through the barrier and was hugging his mother's legs. But Judge wasn't finished. He raised his hand for quiet, and slowly, the courtroom settled down. "Furthermore," he said, pulling out his personal checkbook, something I learned later he kept for exactly these kinds of moments, I'm writing you a personal check for $2,000 to help you with your housing situation." Maria actually gasped. "Your Honor, I can't. I couldn't possibly." "You can and you will," said firmly but kindly. "Consider it a gift from one parent to another. I have children too, Ms. Rodriguez, grandchildren. If they were in your situation, I would hope someone would help them." But the surprises weren't over. Catherine Walsh, the prosecutor, approached the bench. "Your Honor, if I may?" Nodded, looking curious. "The state would like to contribute as well. I'm sure I speak for many in this courtroom when I say Ms. Rodriguez's story has touched us deeply. With the court's permission, I'd like to pass around a collection for her." What happened next was extraordinary. For the next 20 minutes, as the regular court schedule ground to a complete halt, people lined up to contribute. Lawyers from other cases, other defendants waiting for their hearings, court staff, reporters, including myself. I'll admit it. I put in $50, everything I had in my wallet. The bailiff, a gruff man named Tom Morrison, who I'd always thought had a heart of stone, contributed $100 and was crying as he did it. "My daughter had cancer," he said to me quietly. "I know what it's like." By the time the collection was finished, Maria Rodriguez had received over $8,000 in cash and checks. She sat in the defendant's chair, surrounded by her children, now all three of them clinging to her as person after person came up to shake her hand, to hug her, to tell her they were praying for her family. She kept saying, "Thank you," over and over, but I don't think she really believed it was happening. Judge sat on the edge of his bench, not behind it, but perched on the front edge, watching the scene with a satisfied smile. When I caught his eye, he gestured me over. "Adam," he said, we'd known each other for years, "you're going to write about this, aren't you?" "With your permission, Your Honor, yes. This is something people need to hear about." He nodded thoughtfully. "Then make sure you include this. What happened today isn't about me. It's not about some judge being generous. It's about remembering that behind every case, every file, every violation, there's a human being. There's a story. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes, the most important thing we can do is listen to that story and respond with our hearts, not just our rule books. Justice and compassion aren't opposites," he continued, his voice growing passionate. "They're partners. They should be partners. Yes, we need laws and rules and consequences. Society can't function without them. But we also need wisdom to know when to apply those rules strictly and when to recognize that life has already punished someone far more severely than any fine ever could." He looked back at Maria, who was now laughing through her tears, as her children chattered excitedly about what they would do with the money. That woman has been through hell. Adding $475 to her burden wouldn't make society safer. It wouldn't teach her a lesson she doesn't already know. It would just be cruel. And I refuse to use my courtroom for cruelty. I published the story the next day, and within hours it had gone viral. The video of the hearing, courtroom cameras had captured everything, was viewed over 50 million times in the first week. Judge E, typically a local figure known mainly in Rhode Island, became a national symbol of compassionate justice. But for me, the real story came 3 months later. I was in the courthouse lobby when I saw Maria Rodriguez. She looked different, well-rested, with new clothes, a peaceful expression on her face. She was alone, and when she saw me, she smiled and waved. "Mr. Broderick, I was hoping I might run into you." "Ms. Rodriguez, it's good to see you. How are things?" "Things are good," she said, and her smile grew wider. "Really good. We found an apartment, a beautiful 2-bedroom with a backyard where the kids can play. I got a full-time job with benefits at a medical supply company. Carlos just finished 3rd grade with all A's and B's. He's playing Little League now. Can you believe it? After everything, he's playing baseball." I felt my throat tighten with emotion. "That's wonderful. I'm so happy for you. I wanted to thank you," she said, "for writing that story, for sharing what happened, Because of all the attention, I got job offers. People wanted to help. We're not rich, but we're stable. For the first time in years, I'm not terrified every time I open my mailbox. You don't need to thank me, I said. Your strength, your love for your children, that's what moved people. I just wrote it down. She shook her head. No, it was more than that. You helped people understand. And Judge... Her eyes filled with tears again, but this time, they were happy tears. He changed my life. He changed everything. Actually, she said, reaching into her purse, I came here today to make a donation to the court's hardship fund. Judge told me about it. It helps people who can't pay court fines and fees. I know $500 isn't much, but I wanted to give back. I wanted to help someone else the way I was helped. I watched her walk to the clerk's office. This woman who 3 months ago had been one paycheck away from homelessness, now donating money to help others in similar situations. And I thought about what Judge had said about justice and compassion being partners. He was right. In that courtroom on that February morning, we all witnessed something profound. A reminder that our systems of justice, for all their necessary rules and procedures, are ultimately administered by human beings. And when those human beings choose compassion over rigidity, when they see people instead of just case numbers, when they remember that mercy is not weakness but wisdom, that's when the justice system truly serves its highest purpose. Maria Rodriguez came to court that day expecting punishment. She received kindness. She came expecting judgment. She received grace. She came expecting to lose everything. Instead, she gained hope. And watching her walk out of that courthouse, her children beside her and a future full of possibility ahead of them, I was reminded of why I became a journalist in the first place. To tell stories that matter. To shine light on moments of genuine humanity in a world that too often feels cold and impersonal. Judge could have done what was easy. He could have enforced the fines by the book. No one would have blamed him. The law was clear, the violations documented, the case straightforward. Instead, he did what was right. And in doing so, he didn't just change one woman's life. He reminded an entire nation that justice without compassion is just another word for cruelty, and that sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is simply see each other, really see each other, as fellow human beings deserving of dignity, respect, and a second chance. That's the story I'll never forget. That's the moment that will stay with me until my last day. Not just because of the tears or the drama or the viral video, but because it showed me something I'd begun to doubt. That goodness still exists in this world, that compassion still has power, and that one person in one moment really can make all the difference. I'm Adam Broderick, court reporter for the Providence Journal, and I've covered thousands of stories. But this one, Maria Rodriguez and the judge who chose mercy, this one I'll be telling my grandchildren, because this one matters. This one shows us who we could be if only we had the courage to lead with our hearts.